Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to another Midweek Refuel, where we break out the ancient writings of much smarter people and hope that something rubs off on us. If anything does rub off, you can rub it right back off with some soap and water. But if anything really does rub off, would you rub this button and rub that button with your mouse or a mouse? Borrow a mouse if you need to. Your support is greatly valued. We really do appreciate it. Today's chapters are thick. They are thick as thieves. The topics that Augustine broaches in these few short chapters are wide, varied, and they are esoteric. Esoteric, if you do not know what the word means that it's of a flavor that only certain palates can taste. It has to be a trained palate, or more precisely, it is the knowledge that requires already accumulated special knowledge to even comprehend. And this sounds fairly spooky because of the things that the word esoteric has been used for in popular circles. Things like ceremonial magic is esoteric, or even the higher degrees of Freemasonry are esoteric. However, electrical engineering or even advanced basket weaving could be considered forms of esoteric teachings or esoteric knowledge once you advance far enough down the line. You have to have a foundation on which to build everything else if it is esoteric. If I can teach it to anyone, it is considered exoteric. No special or previous knowledge is needed. If, however, you must be initiated into the mystery, then it is esoteric. Everything from epistemology to apophatic theology is included in today's reading. I'm not even sure how these things are pronounced. I'm not even sure these things had names when Augustine was curious about them. So in some ways, we are at the dawn of philosophic thought being used to analyze theological concepts. And for the church, names like Jerome, Origen, and of course Augustine himself are as important to the theological world as names like Plato, Socrates, or Aristotle are to the philosophic world. Truth be known, theology and philosophy aren't that separate. Well, theology and philosophy were not as separate disciplines as we think of them today. Back then, they were enmeshed together, and today at the higher levels, they are enmeshed together. They're inseparable. Only at the exoteric level do we split them up. To study one was to think about the other. Neteru, Elohim, God, or the Platonic forms, all these were metaphysical concepts outside of the physical, above the physical, metaphysical concepts that act as foundations, metaphysical concepts that pervade much of early thought. And I'll let you in on a little secret. They were and are the foundation on which our entire Western way of viewing the world came from. The Western worldview comes from these foundations. And I believe it is best to just read it and allow the mystery to form some sort of shape in your mind that one day will acquire skin and hair and breath after experience and study have injected living life into it. But we will point out some of the highlights so that if you are new to Augustine or theological thought, you will have at least a foothold from which to form better ideas on how to scale the mountain of sacred wisdom. I remember the feeling of the church in the 1980s. The feeling was pastel. The feeling was that the gospel was receivable by the feeblest of minds. And because of that, no real critique was allowed. And I'm telling you again, this is how I feel. This may not have been the facts on the ground. This was my subjective recollection of it. To demand answers, as a young child, to demand answers from a Sunday school teacher at times was treated as heretical. How dare you ask such questions? What is hell? Hell is a place for people who ask questions like that. I remember several Sunday school teachers labeling me a troublemaker because I was not satisfied with the standard Sunday school answers, or SSAs, as I like to call them then. One of my favorite teachers picked that up and still uses that term SSAs today. She was one of those teachers who would go look stuff up with you. She'd say, I don't know, let's go look. A good teacher. Or even more admirably, she would confess she didn't know and didn't know how to look it up. Strange how few adults we run into anymore. Much like the public school system, if the lowest common denominator cannot handle the material, then everyone gets dumbed down so as not to hurt the self-esteem of the cognitively impaired or even make them aware of their shortcoming. I'm not saying this to be ugly, and I'm not saying this is how it absolutely was everywhere. I'm saying this is what I felt where I was at the time. The church made me feel as though I was expected to accept all of its tenets on blind faith, and that the blind faith would make it real. I kept hearing about this thing called blind faith, and I never found even the hint from the Bible that I needed to abandon rationality in order to find Jesus. I did not need blind faith. The Bible does not talk about blind faith. The Bible talks about an informed faith. Blind faith, I don't like that. I didn't like that. I didn't read that. What I read was seek and find. Knock and it'll be open. And other little ditties like Hosea 4:6, my people perish for lack of knowledge, not because of knowledge. Any fool can get on a taxi, but not every fool can build one. Jesus's offer of salvation is free to all people everywhere. The taxi will come pick you up. But understanding the beauty and complexity of the act of salvation, aka soteriology, is a whole different matter indeed. The gospel is available to the feeble-minded, no doubt, but that's not where its home is. Theology is not meant for the feeble-minded. Theology's tough. I hope I get this man's name right. I've said it for years this way, so if I get it wrong, correct me kindly and I'll try and get it right. Wittgenstein and Derrida constructed, or let me rephrase that, they deconstructed a world in which they totally disallowed metaphysical language. If it was not material, if you couldn't say this is red and this is a drapery or this is a book, if you said this is a unicorn, all of a sudden the whole thing falls apart, because a unicorn is a metaphysical construct. It's within the imagination or in the metaphysics. So Wittgenstein and Derrida constructed, or rather deconstructed, a world in which they disallowed metaphysical language, and not ever realizing that our entire worldview is built on the foundation of metaphysics. If it was not material, it could not be spoken about, they said. They put these rules on it as though these rules made any sense that they made with words while deconstructing words. Things like unicorns and salvation are all part of a fevered dream for the deconstructionists. That's how they would see it. But we all know that unicorns, salvation, beauty, and love all come from the same place. All come from someplace once removed from the physical universe. They are real. They're just not material. If you are thinking to yourself, Pastor, I think I've seen the problem with your logic. Unicorns are not real, Pastor. What's wrong with you? Then let me ask you this. How many horns and what color is a unicorn? If it is not real, then how did you know the answer to these questions? Perhaps the materialist, atheist, nihilistic worldview has ignorantly cut itself off from the source of knowledge, or de-hooked from the transcendental itself. God seemed to think our imaginations were very important. He seemed to think they were so important that he struck down Babel to save us from our twisted imaginations, being crippled by sin, of course. Our imaginations under salvation are powerful, mighty through God to the bringing down of strongholds. The New Testament believes our imaginations are important when it demands us to think about particular things in order to shape our inner landscapes properly. Our imaginations have brought us things like lasers, space travel, medicines, cartoons, art, and of course, the gas chamber. But imagination isn't all there is to reality either. Our reality is made up of the objective, the subjective, and the spiritual. The objective is the outer reality that we share, that we can all agree on, this is red. And even there, objective reality starts falling apart if you talk about things like color blindness or other limitations within the spectrum of humanly made known phenomena. The objective is the outer reality. and we share that. Subjective is the inner reality, where the unicorns are. Subjective is the inner reality that only the individual is aware of. Now, because of our strange formations, I can speak subjective truths, and you can hear them, and you can work them out in objective reality. What the world seems to forget is that at unicorns off to the side, the subjective reality should conform with objective reality, or you ought to at least be able to say, no, you won't find unicorns in Africa, but you will find them in the metaphysical world, in fairyland. And there is the spiritual realm on top of these two other things, which for me includes all of the universes that we have yet to be able to detect. One day we will know as we are known, and that'll be wonderful, won't it? The subjective is the realm that bridges this gap. Think of it as you would the tripartite structure of man. The mind, objective, communicates with the spiritual, the unknown and unknowable, through the soul or subjective part of the Trinity of man. Augustine asks all these questions and receives many answers, but they are metaphysical answers. They leave God in the hidden cleft of the Holy of Holies. Learning about God is like playing hide and seek. In fact, the Old Testament talks about it in certain areas, like playing hide and seek. I'm not sure it uses those words, but the picture that is painted is of two lovers playing hide and seek. The more places that you know he is not, the closer you come to realizing where he is. He asks the physical world, and it answered. Or Augustine asks the physical world, and it answered, I am not he, but it is he that made me. He asked the depths and the oceans, and they answer, we are not your God. Look above us. He questions Anaximenes, whose philosophy says that air, A-E-R, air, mist, vapor, air, are the building blocks of reality, and yet even air calls out, we are not God. To air is human, I guess. After separating out what he does know, Augustine writes, my inner man gained knowledge of this through the ministry of my outer man. The inner I gained knowledge of this I, the mind, through my bodily senses. I questioned the physical world concerning my God, and it replied to me, I am not he, but it is he that made me, unquote. This entire reading does nothing more than leave a God-shaped hole, but it is a living, breathing, filled hole that seeks a relationship with you. It appears as a hole for the same reason that you cannot see infinity when standing between two mirrors. You will always get in the way. You get in the way of your view of eternity. It is the same reason you will not look into the sun, and it is the same reason that Moses was put into the cleft of the rock. You cannot see God and live. There must be nothing between the two mirrors in order to view eternity. To know the mind of the Creator is impossible in our current state, but we don't need to know his mind in order to look around the universe and see that he is a God of order, not a God of chaos, and to see that he is actively seeking relationship with you. You can have a relationship with God just as you can have a relationship with Einstein. You may not understand everything that Einstein thinks, but you don't need to in order to benefit from the relationship. And that's a poor analogy, but hopefully it gets you looking in the right directions. The truth about God is this, Romans 1:20, quote, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse, unquote. In other words, ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is no excuse, and atheists are fools. If you have been with the channel for any length of time, then you probably are familiar with my invisible man example for God. God is the invisible man. He is a man. He is there. He's just invisible. The Bible says he's the invisible God. Christ is the image of the invisible God. You can see him. You can see the invisible man in the rain, can you not? You can watch his footsteps in the grass. If you splash paint, you will see the invisible man. You hear him when he speaks. You know he is, but you can never really say that you have ever seen him, even though you have actually seen him everywhere. When all questions are asked and all observations are finally made, there is a hole that is left, and that hole is the invisible God staring straight at you. You know him by his absence, and his absence draws him near. There is presence in absence in the Holy Trinity God. Let's turn to Book 10, Chapter 5, and listen closely to what Augustine is not telling you. It might just tell you something. Confessions is a public domain book and can be had for free from the Gutenberg Project website, and I put that link below. Starting Book 10, Chapter 5. But you, O Lord, judge me. For although no man knows all about a man except the man's spirit that is within him, nevertheless there is a part of man that is unknown even to the spirit within him. But you, O Lord, who made him, know everything about him. Even I, although before your presence I despise myself and count myself dust and ashes, nevertheless I know something of you which I do not know of myself. Now truly we see in a glass darkly, not yet face to face. And therefore, as long as I journey away from you, I am more present with myself than with you. I know that you are not subject to any manner of corruption, but for myself I do not know which temptations I can resist and which I cannot. Yet there is hope, for you are faithful. You do not let us be tested more than we can bear, but give us a way out of our testing so that we might endure. I confess, therefore, what I know of myself, and I confess also what I do not know. For what I do know, I know because you enlighten me. And what I do not know only so long as it takes for my darkness to be like the noonday in your sight. My consciousness that I love you, O Lord, is not doubtful, but sure. You have smitten my heart with your word, and I love you. But heaven and earth and all that is in them, these all tell me from all sides to love you. Indeed, they unceasingly tell all people so that they might have no excuse. You will have mercy more deeply on whom you will have mercy, and will show mercy to whom you have shown mercy. And even were that not the case, then heaven and earth would surely tell of your praise to deaf ears. In loving you, what do I love? No physical beauty, no temporal glory, no radiancy of light that commends itself to these eyes of mine, no sweet melody of songs tuned to every mode, no soft scent of flowers or of ointments or of perfumes, no manna, no honey, no limbs that can receive corporeal embrace. Yet I do love some kind of light, some kind of voice, some kind of fragrance, some kind of food, some kind of embrace. When I love my God, who is light, voice, fragrance, food, embrace to my inner man. There it is that a light shines on my soul that no place can contain. A sound is uttered no time can take away. A fragrance cast that no breath of wind can disperse. A savor given forth that eating cannot blunt. And there clings to me that which cannot be torn away by satiety. This is what I love in loving my God. And what is this? I questioned the physical world concerning my God, and it replied to me, I'm not he, but it is he that made me. I questioned the earth, and it said, I am not he, and all that was in it confessed likewise. I questioned the sea and the depths and all living things that creep, and they replied, we are not your God, look above us. I questioned the winds that blow, and the whole air and all its indwellers said, Anaximenes is wrong, we are not God. I questioned the sky, the sun, the moon, the stars, nor are we the God whom you seek, said they. And I said to all these things that surround the doors of my flesh, tell me about my God, that which you are not. Tell me something of him. They cried out with a great voice, it was he that made us. My questioning was the concentration of my mind, and their response was their beauty. And I turned to myself and said to myself, who are you? And I replied, a man. Behold, my body and the soul in me stood ready for me, one without and the other within. From which of these was it that I should seek my God, having now sought him through my body all the way from earth to heaven, as far as I could cast the rays of my eyes? But what was within was better. To that all my bodily messengers brought their reports. It presided over them and judged the replies of heaven and earth and all that was in them, when they said, we are not God. And it was he that made us. My inner man gained knowledge of this through the ministry of my outer man. The inner I gained knowledge of this I, the mind, through my bodily senses. I questioned the physical world concerning my God, and it replied to me, I am not he, but it is he that made me. Surely this beauty is apparent to all whose senses are whole and unimpaired. Why does it not speak the same to all? The animals see it from the greatest to the least, but cannot question it. They have no innate rationality set over them to judge of the senses and the messages they bring. But men can ask so that they may see and understand the hidden things of God through the things that he has made. But men are subject to these created things through their love of them, and being subject, they are unable to judge them. These things neither reply to those that question them, but do not judge them, nor do they alter their utterance, that is, their beautiful appearance. If one man only sees them, and another sees and questions them, appearing in one way to one man, and in another to another, their beauty appears in the same way to each, but is dumb to the one and speaks to the other, or rather, it speaks to all, but is only understood by those who hear its voice outwardly and inwardly tested against the truth. For it is truth that says to men, your God is not earth and sky, nor any corporeal thing. This is what their nature says. Do you not see? It is a physical mass, lesser in its parts than in the whole. You, therefore, are better. It is you, my soul, that I address. For you quicken the mass of your body, giving it life, that which nobody can give to another. But your God is life, to you also, the life of your life. You are never going to have a golden calf to sit on your desk and say, look, it is God. For the very gold of the calf will look back at you and answer, we are not God. God made us. Where is God? Well, he's everywhere. What is God? Well, God is no thing. How will you find him? Now, that's easy. Keep seeking. He will notice. And when he does notice, in that moment, you will discover the beautiful truth. He has found you. Listen carefully. Augustine leaves us with a mystery. I, too, leave you with a mystery. He writes, quote, they, the animals, have no innate rationality set over them to judge of the senses and the messages they bring, but men can ask, so that they may see and understand the hidden things of God through the things that he has made. But men are subject to these created things through their love of them, and being subject, they are unable to judge them. Unquote. Maybe, just maybe, you can't see God because you are so in love with the wrong things that you never take your eye off of them or yourself long enough to spot the wake that they leave behind in the chaos. There is a God-shaped hole. It is filled to overflowing. It is an unending fountain of nourishing water. I hope you find that everlasting spring. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. If not, to err is human. To forgive, divine. Christ is King. Hail to the King.